Good evening. Welcome to Huckabee Today, a show chock full of common sense, uncommonly interesting conversation with a wide variety of guests who are always smarter than me and, of course, more knowledgeable. And that's okay. Despite what you may think, I'm absolutely chill with that. Now, we also have insights into today's news delivered with just enough sarcasm to keep it interesting and maybe put a smile on your face. So let's get started. As we continue setting the table for this year's election, we've got a very special guest tonight, the president and CEO of Goya Foods and the chair of the Hispanic Leadership Coalition, Bob Unanue. Bob, it's great having you here. I got to tell you to start with, I love Goya products. I always keep the wonderful salsa and the black beans in our pantry. We're never without it. And we just appreciate the great quality and your incredible company, which is the #1 Hispanic food company in the entire country, which is a pretty big deal. So welcome to the show.
Honored to be with you and your voice, and you are extremely smart and intelligent and knowledgeable. So please, and your faith is really what is so important of a voice today for our country and for our world.
Well, that is very kind. And it is what moves me, motivates me, and keeps me in the game, because I think that in many ways, Bob, we're dealing with a different kind of circumstance in our world. It's not just the left, the right, the Democrats, Republicans, but in some cases, looking at some of the issues, it's almost like we're dealing with good and evil. Not the right and the left, but the right and the wrong. And it's as if sometimes we just need to step back, get away from the political aspect of it, and look at it as Americans, look at it with some common sense and say, what makes sense? What would our parents and grandparents think if they were here to give us some guidance?
That's so true. And, I don't think we're feeling valued these days. If people who believe in God believe that we receive our value from God. If you don't, we might want to look for our value in a flag or in a letter. We're not loving God. We're not loving our neighbor as ourselves. And we have to get back to that. The Cuban poet, José Martí, said there are individuals born to love and create, love and build, and others to hate and destroy. And those are the two paths. And I believe we're in a spiritual war. I was in the White House on July 9th, 2020, and I, according to the cancel culture, incorrectly used the word blessed, which was put on my lips by the Holy Spirit, and Donald J. Trump in the same sentence. A boycott was formed, but with the protection of the Holy Spirit, a boycott was formed. And I think the Holy Spirit has been with us. God is not happy with a world that's turning away from God. And I believe that God also had his hand on our President Trump. And to turn his head at a moment when you had a bullet perpendicular to his head and it went parallel as he turned his head. And so it's the hand of God, and we're in the spiritual war, and this is what is so important and it's existential about this election coming up.
You mentioned the attempted boycott, because it seemed to have backfired on those who put it out there. I was one of those people who went out and bought every Goya product I could on the shelf. I got to some stores and found out it was all gone because everybody else had the same idea. So there were so many people that just because you expressed yourself, and you really weren't overtly political in it, I remember it quite well, you just loved your country. And for that, there were people who thought that even showing up at the White House, that somehow made you terrible. They tried to boycott, but net result, it seemed to call a lot of attention in a positive way to the Goya brand. By the way, I still know the motto: if it's Goya, it's got to be good.
Well, I didn't just appear there. It's true. And I believe the Holy Spirit, like I said, who put the word blessed on my lips, was protecting this country. This was July 9th of 2020. We're in the middle of COVID. And, under COVID, we were an essential business, food. And as an essential business, we were allowed to operate. But work is essential. We have to have a reason for getting up every morning: God, family, work, freedom. And that spirit is taken away from us. So I wanted to offer the country through the chief executive food. I went to offer 2 million pounds. We ended up uh, offering over 5 million pounds, and not only in the United States, but
Nice.
around the world. And also, the president asked me to join a commission, the White House Commission on Hispanic Prosperity. But that's the reason I was there. And I had been with the Obamas and the Let's Move program, the My Plate program, which takes the pyramid of food, the food pyramid to a portion control plate. So we were there to really. I also had the intention of getting President Trump closer to the Latino community, which we are the second largest Latino country in the world after Mexico, and we will be the biggest group in this country. But they say by 2050, or maybe with the next caravan. But the we have in our hands as Latinos who value God, family, work, freedom. Many coming from countries with no freedom, with no middle class, no opportunity. Uh, we value that, and so we have the opportunity and the responsibility, I believe, to lead this country with the commonality that we have, because we're very divided in all these countries, but the commonality of our values that you have on your program, of faith, of God, family, work, and freedom. In my lifetime, and I'm 70, I've only known freedom. And many of these kids today only know freedom, and we don't respect or value the many who have come before us and sacrificed their lives, that we have this freedom.
Bob, it's fascinating getting to visit with you. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. I want to continue, and we're going to take a break for the sponsors. Just stay with us, because we're going to be back with the president and CEO of Goya Foods and talk more about America and the influence of the Latinos in this country. We've got a lot more to discuss, and you're going to want to be here for it. Stay tuned. We're back with Bob Unanue, the president and CEO of Goya Foods. Bob, the Hispanic and Latino community in this country are a vital part of America, many having come here, becoming some of our strongest citizens. And there's a little fact that most Americans aren't aware of. In our volunteer army, almost 20% of those serving to protect us are people from the Latino community. I doubt very few Americans are aware of that large percentage, much higher than most any other group. Why is that?
Well, you have political migration, you have economic migration. My grandfather left Spain in 1904 at 17 years old for Puerto Rico and then the U.S. to find opportunity to work and to prosper. In 1945, after World War II, the Puerto Rican community came into the U.S. In large numbers. The second largest group in the United States, next to Mexico, which is 60% of the population, and the Puerto Ricans. There's 6 million Puerto Ricans on the mainland. So, but then the Cubans came in 1959 with Castro, and so that was a political migration. So those happened to be more white collar. My uncle used to say that money is the most cowardly. The first thing to leave a country is the money, is the capital. In Spain, there's 5.5 million Latinos. The biggest group is Colombian. So now you have a new communist or dictator in Colombia, Venezuela. And so, yeah, but generally, the U.S. Latino is the working class. They've come to work. And when COVID shut down work, haphazardly, it affected most greatly the Latino population. And, we share those values, like I said before: God, family, work. Work is very important. And when you work, you have skin in the game. When I got out of college in '76, I was born in New Jersey, the tax rate was like 1.4%. I made $4 an hour at my company. They didn't like paying us very much, but that was $8,000 a year. But I paid taxes. When you have skin in the game, you know, things have value. 59% of the illegal immigrants coming in today have better benefits than most Americans. I've worked close to 50 years. My Social Security amount is a joke. It's smaller than immigrants coming into this country who have not worked. And yet we have to work more than half a day for someone else not to work or someone else not to pay taxes. And it's not sustainable. You know, communism works until you run out of other people's money to spend.
Yeah, great quote by Margaret Thatcher, and she's 100% right. You had mentioned about the importance of work. My observation has been that people from the Latino community not only are hard workers, but they tend to be people of extraordinarily commitment to their families and they're faith focused. They're the most pro-life, pro-traditional marriage. I've often said I only wish that some of the more Caucasian members of the American community were as dedicated in faith and dedicated to biblical principles as what I see among the Latino community. So there's a perception that, well, people in the Latino or Hispanic community, they're just going to automatically vote for the Democrats. I don't necessarily find that to be the case when they understand that sometimes there are people in one party, they don't share their values of biblical marriage or the sanctity of human life and the value of it. What needs to happen to do a better job of communicating that to people in the Latino community?
Yes, well, you know, the Latino community, yes, is very work focused, and but what's happened is, and we are a country of immigrants. People have left countries with no freedom, with no middle class. The middle class built this country, and so we're coming in. We're seeing a country now where the middle class is being annihilated. With COVID, they took away our spirit. The war on fossil fuels. Ever since, you know, the first day that Joe Biden got into office, with the first 50 executive orders, basically undid everything that Donald Trump had done. It opened up the border. It declared war on fossil fuels. It did the Green New Deal, and all these benefits where immigrants, illegal immigrants, can vote, and they can also receive more benefits. The big problem today, I started this thing, Goya Cares, which has to do with child trafficking and mental health. There's the child trafficking
Wow.
business is hundreds of billions of dollars, along with drugs and arms sales. It's money and greed. The genie said to Aladdin, "Never drink from the cups of money or power. You'll never be satisfied." And what we're doing, the U.S. Hispanic is the largest victim of trafficking. The U.S. is the largest consumer. 75% are women, and 25% are children. But last April 23rd, April 26th, I'm sorry, 2023, Tara Lee Rodas testified before Congress that the U.S. is the middleman in the trafficking of children, losing over 85,000 children, now over 100,000 children, to sponsors who were not only not vetted. We were handing over children, 40 children to one address, sponsors getting multiple addresses so they can receive more children. So unfortunately, with the poverty and despair in a lot of these countries, families are selling their children. I've been to countries like Costa Rica where
East.
a 7-year-old child is sold. It's terrible. But everything boils down to money, unfortunately, in a lot of these things. So they sell the child for next to nothing to the cartels. The cartels are selling them to us, to the United States and to Mexico. We need to, I don't know why nobody can follow the money, but there's so much money in this, hundreds of billions of dollars. And then when Javier Becerra, who is in charge of ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, or HHS, Health and Human Services, says that Henry Ford would say this is no way to run an assembly line. We got to bring in children faster. Why? And people faster. Why? One, for the money. and two, to control. Let's keep ourselves in power, the money and the power. And I don't know why we're not following the money. These cartels don't make all the money themselves without greasing the palms, if you will, of governments, including the United States and Mexico. It's my belief.
Well, I think a lot of Americans would share your really frustration, if not anger, that trafficking has become such a huge exploitation of children and women, and so many of them are Latino. But it's tragic. And how refreshing, Bob, to see a major company, a significant employer, that has that level of corporate responsibility and wants to speak out and be a help to people who have no one else speaking for them. We've got to take another break. So while we're taking the break, good time for you to send me an email at comments@mikehuckabee.com. We read them and we share many of them right here on this program. We'll be right back with more with Bob Unanue right after this. Stay with us. We are back with Bob Unanue, the CEO of Goya Foods, a wonderful food company with some great products that my family has enjoyed for a long time. But today we've not been talking about food, we've been talking about our country and the extraordinary capacity of it. Bob, if you had a message that you could share with Latino voters across the country as we head into this sort of final leg toward the election, what message would you hope that they would hear and receive from you?
Well, Governor, I was became involved in the movie The Sound of Freedom, which explains how children have been trafficked around the world, and the great courage of, the role of Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel, in rescuing children, in having the courage to go into the jungles of Colombia. But a lot of trafficking is happening in our own country. As the group which will be the biggest group, which is a Latino group in this country, we have the responsibility, the obligation to form the future of this country with our values: God, family, work, freedom. Now, one of the videos that we've created under Goya Cares with the mental health has to do with, it's called Pause. And pause is, take a moment to stop, press pause. Take a moment to stop and think of another person. So many children are losing their lives because they don't feel valued. We receive value from God. And so take a moment to stop to a stranger, someone who's being bullied. Have the courage to stand up for some other person out of the blue and say, you matter, you're valued, you're loved, you're a precious gift from God. And so, the only thing that can destroy hate is love. And we got to move toward that. We got to move toward God. We're in a spiritual war. And as Latinos, we can lead the way with our values: God, family, work, freedom, to not be exploited. Let us not be the number one exploited group in this world and in this country. Let us stand up for each other in love, and we can change the future of this country. This election is very existential, and we need to vote for the person who values our lives, and I think that person is Donald J. Trump.
Bob Unanue, I can certainly understand why your company has had such great success. The leadership you have and the principles that you operate with: God, faith, family, work, freedom. These are the things that make America great, and it's obviously made Goya Foods great. Thanks so much for being with us today. I hope we'll get a chance to visit again, because I find that just not enough CEOs are brave enough to face the media and to be as honest and open, particularly about the spiritual aspects of this great country and why it really does matter. In a moment, we're going to look at some of your emails, so stay with us. We'll be right back. What a pleasure to have Bob Unanue with us, and just a refreshing conversation with the CEO of a huge company, but he keeps his priorities right: God first, family, hard work, and then freedom. Probably a pretty good way for all of us to live. We're loving getting your emails. We have this one from Lee. Says, we enjoy Huckabee Today and, of course, the Saturday evening show that's filmed in Nashville. Being a product of Arkansas heritage and lineage, especially proud of you and your accomplishments. All of your guests seem to be right on with their conservative views of America and the lack of common sense being displayed by Kamala, as well as her selection of Tim Walz as a running mate. Now, this comes to us from Susan. Says, I cannot join an attack on Kamala Harris, point out obvious and numerous policy flaws, but I can participate only in that. Personal attacks are not your style, but I will say this, I love the idea of a flat tax. I love that idea too. It's one of the things that I will promote as long as I can, till no one will listen to me anymore. But I believe in a fair tax, which is flat, family friendly, and it's finite. We know exactly what we're going to have to pay. By the way, I'll know what we're going to be doing this same time tomorrow. We're going to be hopefully talking to you, and I hope you'll be back to join us. Coming up next, Alan Jackson, so stay tuned. Until then, good night and God bless.